Monument Valley. John Ford has shot 9 movies here. It's become so identified with him, other directors are convinced that using it as a location would be plagiarism. Surely this would be the place, most conducive to getting Mr. Ford's own thoughts on his craft and art.
11, take 1.
Take 1, more than one take, Roy. Shoot.
Mr. Ford, you made a picture called Three Bad Men, which is a large-scale Western. You had a quite elaborate land rush in it.
Mm-hmm.
How did you shoot that?
With a camera.
Isn't The Sun Shines Bright kind of a little picture that you made for yourself? Would that fall in the same?
Uh-huh.
Mr. Ford, I've noticed that that your view of the West has become increasingly sad and melancholy over the years. I'm comparing, for instance, Wagon Master to The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Have you been aware of that change in mood?
No.
Now that I've pointed out, is there anything you'd like to say about it?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Can I ask you what particular element about the Western appealed to you from the beginning?
I wouldn't know.
Would you agree that the point of Fort Apache was that the tradition of the Army was more important than one individual?
Cut.
I met Ford, you know.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Student Charles. Lawyer, eh? Pretty good cover.
Thank you. Sit down. You're going over your evaluations from the schools.
Oh, that stuff. I spent enough time on the other side to know my way around.
That's what you told him, Eddie, after they took your pants off at the Thursday night round table.
If you set me down in a real spot, it'll be another story.
We're considering you for a real spot. We're trying to establish a man in one of enemy area's chief seaports to observe the naval concentration there and to find out whether or not there's a submarine base in that vicinity. Now, you could do it if you went in with the right attitude.
Look, if you think I've got the ability, don't worry about my attitude. Which port is it?
El Porto.
El Porto, my old stamping grounds. I could draw that coast with my eyes closed.
Well, this job calls for you going in with your eyes open. Now, you know the locale all right. But that isn't enough to get by. Now, think it over and come back when you're ready to talk cover.
I'm ready now. El Porto, let me see. I've got it. A fishing boat skipper. I've raced around there enough to know the channels by heart.
Fishing has possibilities. And we have a lot of contacts with fishermen around there, you know, who could probably take care of you.
Then it's all set.
No, it's just something to consider now. If it doesn't hurt your feelings, we'd like to bust you from skipper to an ordinary seaman. You know, every skipper is known to the shore patrol there, but if you were just a member of the crew, like the thousands of in every seaport, well, you might get by with it.
Get by with it? I talk the language like a native. I know those waters better than most natives. How can I miss?
Very easily. By going on like you've been going, by knowing all the answers before you even think of the questions. Now, we'll give you all the dope you require about this El Porto area, but just don't read it. Absorb it.
Okay, if you want to waste time. But I tell you, I know El Porto like a book.
Perhaps the enemy has added a couple of chapters since you've left.
Aye, aye, sir.
We get it set up, isn't that right, Brick?
Yes, sir.
And photograph it where everybody's face is seen and the movements are all laid out and rehearsed, and usually get it in the first take. And he's up, and he's more enthused. And the more takes you take, if somebody misses a line, I mean, you know, the scene goes down and down and down and gets tiresome. And they get tired, you know, see. Well, there's an element of chance, but I don't think there's any nervousness in it. It always came off. And the actors, after all, I mean, are good, and they, you know, I mean, they're pros, and they'll take advantage of any accident that happens. You know, that's just luck. That's just, occasionally you get some luck in pictures. More occasionally you have bad luck. But if something happens that wasn't premeditated, I mean, and it happens, I mean, photograph it. Like the scene, was it? She wore a yellow ribbon. A terrific thunderstorm came up, lightning, I mean, flashing all over the skies, and all the tourists, I mean, broke for their cars, and I said, let's shoot it. We had a very, very pedantic cameraman on it. Very slow. And he says, so we shot this under protest. So we had the cavalry riding into the thunderstorm, lightning flashing and thunder rolling and everything else, and made an interesting shot. Then we finished it up in the studio, I mean, the operation. Mm-hmm. He put under protest on it and won the Academy Award.
Head's right over Queen's heart, Nathan. It's got to come out.
Well?
It's a risky operation at best. Can you halt?
You know I can't.
What do you think of talk in pictures?
Oh, it's necessary. I mean, people expect it now. It helps as long as the dialogue is crisp, you know, and cryptic, and as long as they're not long soliloquies or... Oh, I like talking pictures. They're much easier to make than silent pictures. I mean, silent pictures were hard work. You know, they're very difficult, I mean, to get a point over. You had to move the camera around so much. A talking picture, I mean, just as you and I are talking, I mean, it gets over, I hope. As the sound man.
And yet still the most important aspect of your pictures has always been the visual. Wouldn't you agree?
Perhaps. And I says, if you're going to kiss it, for heaven's sakes, I mean, you're supposed to be a lover. I mean, clasp her in your arms and kiss her on the mouth and clasp her to your arms. And he's Mr. Ford, she's playing my daughter. I said, oh, really? I better look through the damn thing.
Action!
Here, $1.
Oh, throw it in there right by that bush. That's good, that's good. Do that. The lines don't mean anything.
I'll get some out here, though.
Okay, there you go. Okay, quiet.
What do you want, Coach? You want me to say the other line or just the thanks?
Just say the other line. Let's look at that.
Wait,
No, when you get up, I mean, you know.
Okay, first
and
thing.
rub your butt.
I hear you.
Is Chuck out?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're rolling. Dust?
Thanks.
I like that. He just takes the wins and says thanks. They want action pictures, damn it. It's what we're getting paid for. Try it again. Print the other two takes.
Hold it.
Everybody come down. He brought the electricians down out of the flies. He brought everybody down into the middle of the set, and he says, well, Duke's made it. He thinks he's great, and that fella driving the Stagecoach is horrible. Well, we all had a good laugh about it later, but right then I felt about that big.
Well, are you still mad at me, Duke?
Oh, it'd take a special kind of a man to still be mad after 30 years, Coach.
You're talking about the fellow, the fat fellow, the ex-cowboy that drove the Stagecoach.
Yeah, what was his name?
Oh, I don't know what his name was. We couldn't get Ward Bond because he couldn't drive a 6-up, and we got this ex-stuntman. I don't know whatever happened, and the last I knew of me.
I can't believe it. Is that Andy Devine? Hey, Andy, you still mad?
You're doing all the fat parts.
You mean that literally, I suppose. I was just telling the audience a little about Stagecoach. First time we worked together, it seemed to me, right out here was one of your setups.
Are you still trying to impress me with your expertise?
No. I was just thinking about how many pictures we'd made together since then. How wonderful it is to be back up here again.
Anderson living.
Good living.
Oh, they're engraved and everything. This is good to Jimmy Stewart.
Well, I appreciate it very much, boss.
I may have told you I have wide hips all the way from upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
I just wondered if the reason you had
any
me
chance that I get to
playing
work with
Wyatt
you or
Earp to
Henry-
keep people from going to the bathroom is that
Well, that's quite a feather in your cap. But any chance I get to work with you or Henry, I would leap at the chance. I mean, that's why I'm here today.
Yeah,
I'm very flattered and pleased.
well, we love you, boss.
You're a hell of an intermissioner. An intermissioner, I'll say that much way. I'd like to tell a prank if I have enough film in the camera.
Just tell it. They're not rolling.
Well, I want to tell this on film.
Oh, roll them.
Roll them.
Roll 'em. The gag that I remember most was when Mr. Henry Fonda on me. We were doing Young Mr. Lincoln, and Henry, I had never met Henry, and the first time I saw him, he was in makeup. This is true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we were on location up at Sacramento, working on the river. So we finished, and we got on the plane last night, and this very upstanding young man sat by me, and we started chatting. I said, would you like a smoke? And he says, no, thanks. I have some cigarettes, and you're smoking cigars. And I says, we've met before, haven't we? He says, yes, I believe we have. I said, well, I mean, my name is John Ford. He says, fine. He says, my name is Henry Ford. I said, what? And this is true, isn't it? And I had never seen him without the makeup, and I didn't even recognize him. That's a true story.
Yeah.
And that is a prank you pulled on me.
John Ford has said that the best things in film happen by accident, and he may be right. When I went out to what used to be the backlot of 20th Century Fox, I didn't expect to find him there. Last time we'd worked together was in Mr. Roberts, and the first time was in Young Mr. Lincoln.
You remember where you are? You recognize this?
No, I don't. That's the damnedest place, remember? Look at this. I have no idea where the hell we are.
Well, because this is Olympic, I know that the Western Street had to be over there.
Isn't this where the French Street was a part of a French street?
You mean the Bernadette Street?
No, not the Bernadette Street. Now, where is it where you did, isn't this way, over there is where you did the walk in Lincoln?
In talking about those days, I was reminded that I hadn't wanted to play Lincoln. I was a little scared of the part, in awe of Lincoln, I suppose. And I remember Jack telling me then, in language a little too colorful to repeat, that I wasn't going to play the great emancipator, just a backwoods lawyer still wet behind the ears. He convinced me to do it as much by what he said as how he said it.
You walked up the road, if you remember.
I do.
I'll never forget. God was looking down on us that day.
The tears of the multitude, I think you said. I think you said the tears of the multitude when it started to rain.
I had a kid, somebody come out the other day, came in fear and trembling to interview me. So I put him right at ease. I says,
I guess when you get right down to it, John Ford is as much an actor as he is a director. I got the feeling that he enjoyed playing the cantankerous old man, making jokes with the crew, having a good time razzing one of the fellows who'd gone to Yale. At one point, he even broke into a chorus of the Whiff and Poof song.
From the tables down at Maury's. I understand Maury's being sued.
What happened to Maury's?
They're being sued by Women's Lib.
Told me that a writer had come to see him that week to interview him. The result, I gathered, satisfied him, but didn't give the writer much material to work with.
I didn't tell him anything.
John Ford will talk about anything but himself. That makes him an easy man to like and a hard man to explain.
You remember the gunfight in the OK Corral in Clementine?
Surely.
I'd seen it a couple of times. I mean, the other versions. How did you come to stage it the way you did? Had you heard Earp himself tell the story?
Yeah, as I've told you, as we've reminisced about this many times. When Wyatt retired as a lawman, Henry, as you know, he went to some little town north of Pasadena. Now, his wife was a very devout religious woman. And a couple of times a year, she'd go to these religious conventions in Utah and eastern Arizona, and Wyatt would get on a streetcar and go up to Universal City and join us. We became quite friendly, and I didn't know anything about the OK Corral at the time, but Harry Carey knew about it, and he asked Wyatt, and Wyatt described the fight fully, exactly the way that you did it. As a matter of fact, he drew it out on paper, a sketch of the entire thing, and that's Wyatt said I was not a good shot. I did close to him there.
I remember when we shot it, you had a stagecoach or something coming through and raise a big cloud of dust.
That's
that
right.
They used like the present-day smoke screen.
That's right.
Yeah. Was that in his original story?
Yes.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, he told me he had timed it for me. He knew exactly when the stagecoach would come by on a very dusty road, and he weighed his time, and when the stagecoach came by, you made your move and the others made their move. But that's exactly the way it happened.
Jack Ford made all or part of 9 westerns here in Monument Valley. When we came back in June, it was the first time we'd been here together in 15 years. The valley hadn't changed. It never does, but we had. Mostly just getting older, I guess. I came back to reminisce, and I got the feeling that maybe Pappy came back to say goodbye.
You're going to take that over again. I said, hell no. I said, you came crossed out in the action. He said, what do you mean action? Damn horse went down on Wayne almost rode over me. I said, I think it looks good.
I did, too. I just right up on it.
Yeah. Isn't that the road there where the coach came up here?
Right around there, right up to the Indians right here.
It's a very funny coincidence. The fellow we picked out as Geronimo actually is Geronimo's grandson.
Is that right?
No, we didn't find it. Harry just dug it out and told me. He was half Apache, half Navajo.
That's like that Mickey, what's his name? Mickey. The half Irish, half Indian.
Oh, son of a...
Yeah, he's half Irish, half Indian, and whole son of a...
Mickey, yeah. Memories come back.
Mr. Ford, I'll probably get the pronunciation wrong, but I believe your real name is Sean O'Fean, is it, or Fine? How Irish are you? Are you 100% Irish?
Oh, centuries back. O'Fana.
O'Fana.
Sean O'Fana.
When did you come to America?
I was born here.
What sort of a childhood did you have? Were you interested in movies way back?
Not really. I'm not interested in them now, actually. It's a way of making a living. No, oh, I don't know. Occasionally go to movies, and I was never particular. I wasn't what you call an aficionado or anything like that.
Were they hard times, or were you reasonably... Were they hard times, or were you reasonably well-to-do as a family?
Hard times where?
What sort of childhood did you have? Were you poor or well-to-do?
My father, you mean?
Yeah.
We were comfortably well off. We were born on a farm in Maine. He had a big farm there, and he was a farmer and a fisherman, just as he was in Galway Island. And we ate better then than we do now. No, we were, we'd say, we were a comfortable, lower middle-class family, as you would say in England.
How did you get your start in the motion picture business? And tell me about the film The Scrapper.
I beg your pardon?
How did you get your start in motion pictures? And could you tell me about the film called The Scrapper?
Well, I don't know. I think it was in 1919. It was after World War I know, and they had an actor named Harry Carey, who they're about to let go. His contract is running out in 4 weeks, but they wanted to do a picture, a couple of two-reelers with him, and so Carl Lemley, who liked me very much, at that time, I was an assistant director, suggested that I do these. So we went out and made a picture called, I think it was Three Godfathers. And they cut it and came out in 5 reels, and they showed it to him, and he said, that's very good, and let's release it. And they said, no, this is a two-reeler. We can't release a Carey picture in 5 reels. This is a two-reeler. And he said, well, if I go to a tailor for a suit of clothes, and he throws in an extra pair of pants, what do I do, throw the pants back? He said, that's a good picture. So it went out as a 5-reeler. Matter of fact, the picture did very, very well. And so we did another one, and they re-signed Carey. And then we had a change of management. I was getting $50 a week, so as a director they cut me to $35. I don't know why. And that was it. What was your other question?
Well, can you tell me about the film called The Scrapper?
I don't remember it.
You played in it, and I have a review. I have a synopsis of the day. Can I read you the synopsis?
I'd rather you wouldn't.
I'd like to remind you, please. It says...
I remember vaguely. It was a stunt picture.
Yeah.
I used to double my brother in all his stunts. I was just fresh from a varsity football team, and I was in pretty good shape. And all the stunts, we looked very much alike. I doubled for him. And they wanted to make a very cheap picture. And so they asked me to play the lead. There was no acting, and it was all stunts. I mean,
right.
Running at 40 miles an hour and catching an express train and jumping horses off cliffs and that sort of thing.
Yes, your
and
name...
I fortunately came through with no accidents, but I don't remember much about the picture.
It says, Buck the Scrapper loses his girl who goes to the city. Well, you were called
about it.
Buck the Scrapper.
I would like to forget about it.
Okay.
I prefer that they turn on to the BBC musical, isn't it? The musical hour?
That's right.
Uh-huh.
Can you give me a flavour, or what you remember most about filmmaking in 1917 and 18? Was it really as primitive as everybody suggests?
Well, I hardly think that primitive is the right word. In those days, I mean, we had no lights, and we had a big stage, just a board, and over that we stretched canebrick, cotton, to hold the light off, and there'd be 5 or 6 companies working side by side. And as a matter of fact, I mean, we didn't think it was primitive. We thought it was rather nice. It was fun. We all knew one another and visited back and forth, and we exchanged actors, and we'd go over and say, do you mind coming over and playing a butler for us? Well, not a butler. We didn't use butlers in those days. They were mostly Westerns, and it was all very lovely. And Hollywood then, or what it's called, geographically called Hollywood, a place that none of us can define. We don't know where it is. But, I mean, everybody says Hollywood. I mean, for example, this is not Hollywood, and I don't believe there is any studios in Hollywood, but it's just a mass of orange groves.
Sorry.
Well, I'm from Manchester. I boasted. You know all about the Battle of Lewes, then, don't you?
The Battle of Lewes, right, yep.
That's strange for an Englishman. I may know anything about English history. I thought it was only us Irish that knew about English history.
The Iron Horse remains one of the most epic silent westerns ever made. Were you interested in westerns before this, or was it this that fired your imagination?
Well, when I left school, I went to college and I didn't like it. I looked at my curriculum, and this was stuff I'd had in what we call high school or grammar school. And I said, why waste my time learning this stuff? And I didn't particularly like college life, so I left and worked my way west, and I punched cows for a while. I worked in Arizona as a cowboy, and eventually ended up in Hollywood. But did you ask me why I liked the West?
Was it this film particularly that started your tremendous interest in the West? Or had you been interested many years before?
You have to rephrase a question. I mean, I don't...
Well, this was your first really big Western.
Here that doesn't work for BBC. Have to rephrase.
This was your first really big Western. Had you always been interested in the West before that, or was it this that set you off on the Western kick?
Not particularly. I'm not interested in the West. I'd like to make Western pictures because I like the people that I work with. I'd like to get in location. I'd like to leave this place with the smog and fog and traffic and, what do you call them, speedways, freeways, and I like to get out, you know, and live in the open. You work hard, you get up early, you work late, you eat dinner with an appetite, you sleep well. But I do like the people you meet and that you work with. And that is really my only interest in Westerns. As story material, I'm not particularly fascinated by them.
Now, the Irish to us have a reputation for being leisurely. How did you find the schedule of this film on occasion?
Well, quite the reverse. As a matter of fact, we did the picture in 4.5, 5 weeks, and suddenly announced that we'd finished, and, well, the British crews were quite amazed. They said, we usually work much longer than this. We're quite put out. And they're very, very hard workers, actually. The Irish are supposed to be leisurely.
Yeah, I always thought they were.
I'm Irish, and I'm supposed to be the fastest director in pictures. I mean, it's not my métier by any amount of means. None of my so-called better pictures are Westerns, and for some reason or other, I am sort of described as a Western director. But I was born and brought up in the state of Maine, of Irish parentage.
I think this is true because one of my favourite of your films is Prisoner of Shark Island, which is certainly not a Western, but it's a very interesting piece of Americana. What interested you in that particular story?
No, nothing, just a job to do. I was under contract, they told me to do it, so I did it. I like the story of Dr. Mudd, and of course, a great admirer of Mr. Lincoln, and I rather like the whole idea of the thing.
It's one of your more ignored movies. It doesn't crop up in a lot of the books about you, and yet I think it's a very fine film, and yet people talk endlessly about The Informer and Stagecoach. Does this amuse you or irritate you?
About Shark Island?
Yes, and some of your lesser-known films, which I think are just as good.
Well, it doesn't annoy me. I've never read anything about myself. I don't read magazines or picture magazines or I know in France, for example, I mean, they've written 5 or 6 books. The Dane's written a book. And
Sorry, out of film.
Yeah, that's true. Everything happened right there. Oh, that was a little...
In the desert?
A little picture we did in less than 3 weeks. It wasn't supposed to be a big picture, it was just a B picture, and it was very interesting. We had a lot of fun. We were down in the desert. And we got up at 6 o'clock and started working at 7 because of the sun. From 11 on until 2 or 2:30, it'd be impossible to work out there in that heat. And I remember we had one of the first of the so-called producers was on this picture. He was a nice fellow, he was a good friend of mine, and I didn't mind him. But we had a very difficult shot as where the British cavalry was supposed to come into the rescue. And it was very hard. They had to ride way around, you know, so they wouldn't mark up the sand and get in a certain position. And we finally got in position, and the commander of the troop was our expert, our technical expert, an ex-major in the Australian Light Horse. Or should I say Light Horse? And Australian Light Horse. And he was all set, and I gave him this, and he started to come on, and this airplane flew over their heads, and of course the horses scattered. And they finally landed this little satellite airfield we had, and this idiot producer got out with a big cigar and said, you know, and I said, well, you son of a, you know, and of course it spoiled the shot for that day, and we had to do it and wait till the next day. So he said to me, Jack, I've been looking over your schedule, and he said, you start working at 7, and then you quit at 11, and start working from 2:30 till 3. He said, now look at those hours you're losing. Now, if you work right on through, you'd finish 5 or 6 days ahead. And I said, Cliff, I said, you can't work in this heat. He says, it's wonderful. I love it. He says, this is great. He says, I mean, why? What the heat that doesn't bother you? I'm enjoying it. The heat, you know. He said, I feel, you know, boom. I said, I'm sorry. I've got to line this shot up again that you spoiled, you know, see. And he wandered away, and we finally get the shot, and I says, where's Mr. So-and-so? I'd like to talk to him. He says, Mr. So-and-so? I said, yes, the so-called producer that flew in last night. And I said, we've just taken him to the hospital with sunstroke. I'm afraid that I roared with laughter, with great glee.
Great story. Mr. Ford,
the poor fellow, I'll never forget, he was almost woebegone. I went out to the hospital, looked at him, he's pale and worn. He says, "Hello, Jack." So woebegone, you know. He was a wreck. Go ahead.
In between making a lot of A pictures, you turned out scores and scores of what is termed, in England at any rate, B pictures. I don't know really what the phrase means, but anyway, that's what they call them. Was this bread and butter work, or were you all the while broadening your experience?
Now, I think one trouble with the director in this country, and I think, you know, one of the trouble with directors in universally is they'll make a big picture, make probably a hit, and then they try to top it, eh? And usually fall flat on their face. It happens here a lot, and I know it happens with you. So I try to make it a rule, if you make a big picture, which is a hit, the next one do a cheap picture, relax, 3 or 4 weeks, eh, while you're preparing for another story. And usually, of course, to my mind, the little picture is always better. See, my favorite picture, for example, is one you've never heard of, called The Sun Shines Bright. Have you?
Great.
Huh?
Judge Billy Priest.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Well, that's my favorite picture.
The Republic.
That's right.
Great.
Well, we just made the Quiet Man, which is a big hit. So I wanted to change, you know, sort of just for do something else, and we did this, and I loved it. I had a lot of fun doing it. And so that's why. But some people keep on trying to top themselves. Well, you can't.
I think this is the first time you came to a festival.
Yeah, first and last time.
I hope not.
Well, it's okay. Well, you see, thank you, because after all, I am really close to the Belgian people. I am an officer or chevalier or something or other of the Cologne de Belge. I was decorated by the Belgians, and
it's a matter of...
Part of my outfit in World War II were Belgians who had slipped across, you know, the line. And some of them are now in Hollywood, you know. 4 of them are priests. And Jean de Betz has a very important position as an engineer and electrician and, you know, that sort of thing. So I'm very close to the Belgians. I worked with them during the war. I didn't actually, you know, I just sent them ammunition and plastics and that sort of thing. So, you know, my heart is with them. Shoot, go ahead.
Well, I was told that during the last war you were OSS officer, and then with gold you came from Switzerland to Italy. Is that correct? You remember that? The funny story about the gold from Switzerland to Italy?
It's not a funny story. It's a very sad story.
Why?
Well, General Donovan, Wild Bill Donovan, says, I want to take that bag of gold and cross Lake Como and give it to the partisans. So, okay, as we lift, I started to lift up the bag and dislocated my shoulder. He didn't realize how heavy $50,000 in gold was. You know, it's very, very heavy. And I dislocated my shoulder. So it's not a funny story at all. Go ahead.
You did a lot of westerns with famous actors.
I am known as a Western director, but I have, I don't know, 6, 4... Barbara?
Yes?
Where are you?
Right here.
How many Academy Awards do I have?
You have 4 for directing, for direction, and 2 for documentaries. 6 in total.
Oh, I see,
And
yeah.
7 including John Wayne's.
Mhm.
No, you have 6.
John Wine, they call him.
John Wayne. No,
John
you have
Wine.
4.
Okay.
You have one for The Informer.
But I'd love to make westerns. The trouble is I don't make enough of them. You know, the stories are so bad. They present me with stories, with westerns, and I turn them back. I mean, I says, I've done this before. Mr. President, Mrs. Nixon, ladies and gentlemen, I'm overcome with gratitude. I wish I had the words to express my feelings, but I don't. But thank you all. And thank the American Film Institute, George Stevens Jr., Bruce Hersington, all their colleagues. I am most grateful. Tonight is a most momentous occasion in the history and the annals of motion pictures. Tonight, the first time the chief executive of our nation has honored a public motion picture event with his presence. This is a night long to be remembered. Certainly will be by me. Thank you, Mr. President. We've added dignity and statue to our image. We are most grateful. And that's about all I can say before I break down. Thank you.
I don't have the Admiral staff with me.
Thank you, sir. As Captain Jeremiah Dutton said, hope I get through with this. I'm about ready to bust out and crying. As Captain Denton said, as he stepped foot for the first time in many years in continental American soil, I'm stunned and bewildered at this reception. He ended with, "God bless America." I quote his words with feeling. There are some people in this world that don't think that we movie folks have any religion. But a glance around this distinguished audience is a living refutation of that nonsense. In a recent telephone conversation with the president, he said, "What is your reaction to the prisoners coming home?" I said, "Frankly, sir, I broke down, I blubbered and cried like a baby. Then I reached my rosary and said a few decades of the beads. And I uttered a short, fervent prayer, not an original prayer, but one that is spoken in millions of American homes today. It's a simple prayer. It's simply, God bless Richard Nixon. Thank you.